Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into a story of just incredible revolutionary triumph that paved the way for modern freedom, but, well, it also led to a crippling century-long debt. We're talking about the independence of Haiti.
We are, and we're focusing on that brutal seismic conflict that ran from 1791 to 1804.
When you look at global revolutions, the Haitian Revolution really does stand apart.
It's completely foundational. I mean, you could argue it was more radically transformative than the later Cuban or even the Mexican revolutions.
Because this wasn't just a political change.
Not at all. This was the first and really the only successful abolition of slavery that was led by the enslaved people themselves. And it led to the creation of the world's first independent Black republic.
And yet, it feels like we have to start with the present reality because it just hangs over the entire story.
I think we do. Today, as we speak, Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's grappling with, devastating poverty, deep political instability, and the very real control of criminal gangs.
So our mission today is to understand how this magnificent revolutionary victory happened, and then, and this is the crucial part, what extraordinary, devastating price was paid for that freedom.
A price that you could argue shaped its entire modern trajectory.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Saint-Domingue, as it was called. We have to understand what the French were fighting so hard to keep.
Well, it was, quite literally, the engine of global trade at the time. By the end of the 18th century, Saint-Domingue was the single most lucrative colony on the planet, period.
The numbers are they're hard to wrap your head around.
They really are. Think about this. It produced 40% of all the sugar imported by France and the UK combined, and an astounding 60% of the world's coffee.
And this wasn't just some, colonial bonus for the French crown.
No, no. Our sources show that this one island accounted for 2/3 of France's entire foreign commercial investment.
Wow.
It's estimated that something like 5 million French citizens out of 27 million depended economically on this trade.
So is it fair to say that the economy of a major European power was basically mortgaged to this one Caribbean island?
Absolutely. The prosperity of cities like Bordeaux and Nantes was built on the back of this sugar and coffee. But this all rested on a human cost that is just staggering.
Right. To fuel that production, the French transported around 790,000 enslaved Africans to the colony.
And here's where we need to pause, because the numbers themselves tell a terrifying story.
The system was designed to be lethal.
It was. Between 25,000 and 40,000 enslaved people died every single year.
From the labor, the punishment, disease, suicide, it's horrific.
It means the system couldn't sustain itself. It was a human grinder that required a constant, massive resupply from Africa just to keep the production numbers up.
And that kind of system creates a really volatile, deeply racialized social structure.
Exactly. At the very top, you had the Grands Blancs, the big plantation owners.
Then below them, the Petit Blancs, the working-class whites. And they hated the elite, but they saved their real hatred for the non-white populations.
And then you have this layer that really complicates everything. The gens de couleur libre, the free people of color.
Right, many of whom were wealthy landowners and even slave owners themselves.
Yes, but they still faced deep, systemic racial discrimination, almost no political rights.
And beneath all of them, the 500,000 enslaved people who outnumbered the entire white population by a ratio of,
20 to 1.
20 to 1. That makes the whole colony a powder keg just waiting for a spark.
And that spark came from across the Atlantic.
The French Revolution of 1789.
Exactly. The news of the Bastille, the promises of liberty, equality, fraternity. It resonated deeply. But here's the crushing irony.
The same one we see in the U.S. Constitution.
The very same. The French National Assembly, dedicated to these universal rights, at first just excluded the colonies entirely from the Declaration of the Rights of Man, and then in May 1791, they actually gave slavery constitutional status.
Which must have felt like a profound betrayal.
It eliminated any possibility of peaceful reform. You see this perfectly with the rebellion of Vincent Auge in October 1790. He was a wealthy free man of color demanding political rights for his class.
And his capture just sealed the fate of any moderate approach.
It was meant to terrify everyone into submission. In February 1791, Auge was publicly executed using La Rue, the breaking wheel. A horrific medieval torture.
And that act of brutality basically drove the free people of color into an alliance with the enslaved.
The political door was slammed shut. And the actual turning point wasn't political, it was spiritual.
Guacamon, the ceremony in the forest.
On the night of August 14th, 1791, This is where Vodou, the religion of the enslaved, fuses spiritual resolve with political action.
Presided over by the priest, Duty Brickman, and the priestess, Cecile Fatiman.
200 representatives from plantations all around gathered, swore an oath to fight for freedom, and sealed the pact by sacrificing a pig. It was the moment the rebellion became official.
And just 8 days later, it began.
The night of August 22nd, the enslaved population rose up and began systematically burning plantations across the entire North Plain. This was an organized, systematic revolt.
And our sources are clear about the essential role women played here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beyond Cecile Fatiman, you had women like Suzanne Sainte-Bey who actually fought in battle, while others organized resistance and provided spiritual and medical support.
Okay, so this revolt immediately gets tangled up in global power politics. By 1793, France is fighting Spain and Great Britain.
And that foreign invasion creates a radical opening. The French commissioner, a man named Sonthonax, was desperate. He offers freedom to any enslaved person who will fight for the French Republic.
Which he then extends to everyone.
He does. And then back in Paris on February 4, 1794, the Jacobins in the National Convention make it official. They abolish slavery in all French colonies.
A truly radical moment. And this is when Toussaint Louverture really comes to the forefront.
Yes, Louverture, a brilliant military strategist, a former freed slave. He had actually been fighting for the Spanish against the French.
But after the abolition decree, he switches sides.
A shrewd move. He sees that the French Republic now genuinely represents the ideal of freedom. And between 1794 and 1798, his forces defeat both the Spanish and the British. By 1800, he controls the entire island.
And in 1801, he oversees a new constitution.
Right. It keeps Saint-Domingue technically French, but it grants massive autonomy and, crucially, names him governor for life.
And this is where the sources raise a really interesting point. Even at this moment of victory, you have a leader installing himself as an internal head.
It's a critical moment. The commentary points out that this move, becoming a governor for life, a caudillo, even back then, it planted the seeds of future instability and corruption.
And this quasi-independence was never going to fly with the new guy in Paris, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Napoleon just saw the lost engine of wealth. He flat out refused to recognize Louverture's constitution.
And he decided to take it back by force.
He organized a massive expedition, 40,000 soldiers and sailors, led by his own brother-in-law, General Leclerc.
With secret instructions.
Chillingly clear instructions. Restore the plantation economy and restore the system of slavery.
And the initial invasion, it was devastating for the revolutionaries.
It was. The French landed in February 1802 with overwhelming force. And shockingly, several of Louverture's key generals, including Jean-Jacques Dessalines, actually defected to the French.
Why? Personal rivalries.
Personal rivalries, political ambition. It fatally weakened the indigenous army. Louverture was forced into an armistice.
And then the French betrayed him.
A month later, June 7, 1802, they arrest him under false pretenses, deport him to a cold mountain prison in France, Fort de Joux, where he dies of pneumonia and malnutrition.
But not before he supposedly says those famous words.
In overthrowing me, you have cut down only the trunk of the tree of liberty for the blacks. It will spring back from the roots, for they are deep and numerous.
And he was right, because Napoleon's plan became obvious.
The French had already restored slavery in Guadeloupe, so the people of Saint-Domingue knew what was coming. They rose up in this massive guerrilla resistance.
And Dessalines, the defector, has a change of heart.
A major crisis of conscience. He realizes his mistake, rejoins the fight, and is proclaimed General Chief of the indigenous army. The war for independence is back on, and it's fiercer than ever.
The brutality on both sides, according to the sources, was just extreme.
Unbelievable. General Leclerc wrote to Napoleon advocating for, essentially, genocide against all the men of the mountains. His successor, Rochambeau, even imported dogs from Cuba to hunt down and kill rebels.
So what turned the tide?
Two things. First, yellow fever. It absolutely devastated the French troops. It even killed Leclerc himself.
And the second?
The British. They resumed their war with France in 1803 and set up a naval blockade. It was a strategic move, but it was critical. It stopped Napoleon from sending reinforcements.
And that leads to the final, decisive battle.
The Battle of Vertières, November 18, 1803. Dessalines' forces completely rout the French. The French evacuate a few days later, and that's it. The end of colonial rule.
Which brings us to the birth of the nation, January 1st, 1804.
Dessalines officially proclaims independence, and he renames the colony Haiti, the original Taino word for land of mountains. The Declaration's title says it all. Liberté ou la mort, liberty or death.
They even create a new flag. They take the French tricolor,
And they rip out the white stripe.
symbolizing the removal of the white colonial rulers.
Exactly. And Catherine Flawn sews the blue and red back together, symbolizing the unity between the black and mulatto populations.
But the first few months of independence were marked by more violence.
Yes. Between February and April of 1804, Dessalines ordered the systematic massacre of the remaining white population, somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 people.
Our sources note that Dessalines justified this as a brutal but necessary act of political vengeance to ensure there would be no going back.
And there were exceptions. Polish soldiers who had defected, some German settlers, doctors, priests, but it was a horrifying period.
Later that year, Dessalines proclaims himself Emperor Jacques I.
And the first imperial constitution declares that all Haitians, no matter their skin tone, would now be known as Black Africans, trying to erase those old colonial lines.
But that empire was incredibly short-lived.
Dessalines was assassinated in 1806, and the country tragically split into two rival states until 1820. The cycle of political instability began almost immediately.
And that instability was made so much worse by international hostility. This takes us to the truly devastating part of the story: the price of recognition.
The world's powers were terrified of a free black state governed by former slaves.
Which brings us to the hypocrisy of the United States.
Profound hypocrisy. The U.S., under President Thomas Jefferson, immediately refused to recognize Haiti. He was more concerned with protecting slavery in the American South than upholding his own nation's ideals of liberty.
He was afraid of Haitian contagion.
The idea that this successful slave revolt could spread. So Haiti was deliberately quarantined by the most powerful nations in the hemisphere.
So France finally recognized Haiti in 1825, but the price. It's just unbelievable.
It was an indemnity of 150 million francs. And you have to understand, that's equivalent to about $21 million today.
And this money was demanded as compensation for French planters for the loss of their property?
Explicitly including their formerly enslaved people.
Yeah.
Haiti was forced to pay its former oppressors for the loss of their human beings.
And they had to pay it in just 5 years, with a French fleet of warships sitting right off the coast as a threat.
President Jean-Pierre Boyer had no choice but to sign. And even though the debt was later reduced, the damage was done.
This is the critical economic fact of modern Haitian history.
It is. Between 1825 and 1947, the year they finally paid it off, about 80% of the nation's total wealth went to servicing this odious debt.
122 years.
It completely mortgaged Haiti's future. It prevented the creation of infrastructure, education, healthcare. It's the groundwork for so much of the economic failure that followed.
And yet, despite all of that, the legacy of the revolution itself is undeniable.
Oh, absolutely. The only successful slave revolution in history. The first independence movement in Latin America. The only Atlantic revolution that truly tried to make human rights universal.
And its impact was felt directly across the continent, particularly with Simón Bolívar.
A crucial story. After defeats in 1815, Bolívar was exiled to Haiti. President Pichon gave him arms, money, troops, everything he needed.
With only one addition.
That Bolívar abolished slavery in all the territories he liberated, and Bolívar honored that promise. He later called Pichon the author of our liberty.
The Haitian Constitution also set this radical precedent that any African person who set foot on Haitian soil was automatically free.
It was a direct challenge to the entire American slave system, and it inspired movements everywhere.
So, to sum it up, the Haitian Revolution is this extraordinary victory of the enslaved against Napoleon's army, establishing a nation based on freedom and equality.
It's a testament to human resistance against impossible odds. But the whole story, from the beginning to that final debt payment in 1947, it really raises a final important question for you to think about.
The independence of Haiti proves that freedom can be won through impossible struggle, but it also raises a dark question. Was the tragic destiny of modern Haiti cemented not by the violence of the revolution itself, but by the coordinated, devastating financial revenge of the world's most powerful nations? What does it truly mean for a nation to be free when its entire economic life is mortgaged for over a century to compensate its former oppressors?